I boarded the flight that morning feeling proud, finally taking a moment for myself after months of non-stop work. I had saved up for this, a first-class seat, a small reward for years of hard effort. As I walked down the aisle, ticket in hand and a calm smile on my face, I spotted something that instantly made my heart drop. A passenger was already sitting in my seat, relaxed, sipping orange juice, as if they belonged there. At first, I thought it was just a mistake. Maybe they were confused or misread their boarding pass. But when I politely mentioned that the seat was mine, their smug response changed everything. The flight attendants tried to intervene, but the passenger refused to move, claiming they had earned it more than I did. The tension grew, whispers spread through the cabin, and every eye turned toward us. I could feel my frustration boiling, but I stayed calm. What happened next, though, no one on that flight could have expected. Within minutes, the entire plane came to a standstill, grounded before we could even leave the runway. Everyone wanted to know why. How did a simple seat dispute turn into a full-blown flight delay? And what power did I possibly have to make that happen? The answer shocked everyone on board, and it's something that still gets talked about today. But before I tell you what really happened, let me take you back to how it all began. It all started the week before that flight. I had been traveling non-stop for work, handling back-to-back meetings and sleepless nights, trying to close a deal that could change my career. This trip was supposed to be different, a quiet flight home where I could finally relax and breathe. I booked my first-class ticket weeks in advance, double-checked everything, and even arrived early at the airport to avoid any last-minute chaos. Everything seemed smooth, at least until I stepped onto that plane. The passenger sitting in my seat looked perfectly comfortable, scrolling through their phone like nothing was wrong. When I mentioned the seat number, they barely looked up and said, "You must be mistaken." I showed my ticket again, expecting them to realize the error. Instead, they smiled and said something that made my stomach tighten. "It doesn't matter who paid more. I'm sitting here now." The flight attendant tried to defuse the situation, but the passenger wouldn't budge. Other travelers began recording, whispering about what was happening. My heart raced, not out of anger, but disbelief. I'd worked too hard for this moment to be dismissed so I could sense there was more behind this than just arrogance. Something deeper that I couldn't quite see yet. As the captain's voice came over the intercom, I realized this was no longer a simple argument over a seat. The decision that followed would change the course of the entire flight, and expose something no one expected. The argument grew more complicated by the minute. The flight attendants exchanged uneasy glances, clearly unsure how to handle the situation without delaying departure. The passenger in my seat, dressed sharply and carrying a confident air, kept insisting they were upgraded last minute. But when the attendants checked the system, no such upgrade existed. Still, the person refused to move. The other passengers started getting restless. Some whispered in sympathy, others just wanted the flight to take off. I stayed calm on the outside, but inside, my patience was wearing thin. I wasn't angry about the seat itself, it was about the principle. I had worked hard, paid for my comfort, and was being dismissed as if it didn't matter. What made it stranger was how defensive the passenger became every time I spoke. It was as if they were hiding something. Then came a small twist. One of the crew members quietly approached me and asked if I could step aside for a private word. She looked nervous. In a hushed tone, she said there was a technical issue with my booking that needed to be verified. But when I checked my app, everything was still confirmed and valid. That's when I realized someone might have tampered with my reservation. Meanwhile, the cabin lights dimmed, and the tension spread like static. The captain hadn't announced anything yet, but the flight wasn't moving. I could feel it. Something bigger was about to happen, and it wasn't just about a stolen seat anymore. The air inside the cabin felt heavier by the second. Passengers were shifting in their seats, murmuring under their breath as the delay dragged on. I could see the crew whispering near the front, their expressions tense. The passenger still sitting in my seat crossed their arms, pretending to be calm, but there was a flicker of unease in their eyes now. Something wasn't right, and I could feel it. A few minutes later, the captain finally stepped out of the cockpit, which almost never happens before takeoff. The moment he walked down the aisle, everyone went silent. He stopped beside me, looked at my ticket, then at the passenger who had taken my seat. The two exchanged a look that made my stomach twist. The captain asked for both of our IDs. Mine matched perfectly with the ticket and booking system. The other passenger hesitated. They fumbled through their bag, stalling, and then quietly said they must have left it in their carry-on. The tension snapped. The captain's tone hardened, and he instructed the crew to halt boarding and secure the cabin. Suddenly, the engines powered down. The flight was officially grounded. Gasps filled the air. I stood there frozen, not sure if I should feel relieved or alarmed. The captain then leaned toward me and whispered something that made my heart race even faster. Whatever was happening wasn't just about a seat anymore, it was about something far bigger, something that could change everything once the truth came out. When the captain leaned in, his words hit me like a shock. He said the passenger in my seat wasn't even listed on the flight manifest. My ticket had been verified and cleared, but theirs didn't exist in the system at all. Somehow, they had boarded without official authorization. The captain's voice was calm, but I could see the concern in his eyes. This wasn't just about a seating mistake anymore, it was a security issue. The passengers' confidence started to crack. They avoided eye contact, clutching their phone tightly, as if it held the answer to everything. The crew discreetly made a call, and I noticed 2 ground staff members approaching the plane through the window. Around me, passengers were whispering louder now, trying to piece together what was happening. The tension had shifted. People were no longer annoyed about the delay. They were curious, and a little scared. Then came the real twist. As the crew asked the passenger to hand over their boarding pass, a second attendant came rushing down the aisle, holding a printed list. She looked directly at me, and then at the captain. "Sir," she said softly, "this name here, it's been duplicated under 2 different booking codes." Everyone froze. 2 tickets, 1 seat, and both tied to the same flight details. I felt my heart pounding. The captain's face went pale, and the mysterious passenger's hands began to tremble. Whatever was happening wasn't an accident. It was planned, and I was right in the middle of it. The captain's expression turned serious as he examined both booking codes. The room felt frozen. Even the hum of the plane seemed to fade. He called for security, and the mysterious passenger finally stood up, their calm masks slipping away completely. They tried to explain that there had been a mix-up, that they'd been personally upgraded by someone from the airline. But when the captain asked for a name, they couldn't give one. The truth was unraveling fast. Moments later, a security officer boarded the plane, holding a tablet linked to the airline's internal system. Within seconds, they confirmed what everyone suspected. The duplicate booking had been created manually from inside the airline's database. Just hours before the flight, someone had tampered with the system, and the fake reservation matched all my details except for one. The payment record. That's how they got through check-in unnoticed. As everyone watched in silence, the officer revealed the shocking part. The person who helped create the false booking wasn't a stranger. It was an employee who had recently been suspended. The passenger and that employee were connected. They'd planned to use my flight and seat to test access to premium systems before it was locked down for good. The captain turned to me, apologizing for everything. But before security escorted the passenger off the plane, they looked back at me and said quietly, "You were never supposed to be on this flight." That line echoed in my head as the engines restarted, and the truth still felt unfinished. After the passenger was escorted off, the cabin finally exhaled. The tension that had filled the air slowly faded into quiet conversations and relieved sighs. The captain personally came to speak with me, explaining that the airline system had flagged the duplicate booking too late, and my early check-in was what exposed the fraud. The person who had taken my seat had been working with a suspended employee to test access loopholes, using fake upgrades to enter first class unnoticed. It wasn't just about a stolen seat, it was about exploiting a flaw that could have affected many passengers. Once everything was cleared, the airline offered apologies and compensation, though that wasn't what mattered most to me. Sitting back in my rightful seat as the engines roared to life again, I looked out the window and felt a strange calm. What started as a frustrating moment had turned into something much bigger, a reminder of how quickly truth can come to light when you stand your ground. During the flight, a few passengers stopped to thank me for handling things calmly. One even said, "You saved us from who knows what." That stayed with me. It wasn't about power or revenge, it was about principle. By the time we landed, the incident had already gone viral. But for me, it wasn't just a story. It was proof that doing the right thing, even in small moments, can change everything. Sometimes, all it takes is standing up, even for one seat.